Very much for staying with us. You're welcome back to Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the guests of the day. I am joined by a member-elect of House of Representatives representing the Ogbaru Federal Constituency of Anambra State, Honorable Victor Afam Ogene. We're discussing the race to the 10th National Assembly as the battle for the principal position heats up. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Honorable.
Good evening, Jumoke. For having
good evening
me, and
you.
Good evening, Nigerians.
It is a pleasure. Now, before we get into the core parts of our discussion tonight, let's talk about you for a minute. You were a news magazine editor for years before becoming a politician. Why did you go into politics?
Well, I went into politics, elective office, precisely by happenstance. I was editor of the Source magazine. But by 2010, the guy who was representing my constituency had some issues, and we felt that we had to stand in opposition against his desire to return for a second tenure. And in the midst of all of that, some key players who were on ground, I lived in Lagos, said, no, why can't you throw your hat in the ring? That as a journalist you've been criticizing, you can also come and make a difference if you feel you're up to it. Prior to that time, I had not even contested a councillorship position besides the Guild of Editors Politics, of which I was a standing member of the Guild at the time. And so I took up the challenge and joined the All Progressives Congress, APGA, which had Governor Peter Obi at the time as the headsman in Anambra State. And by virtue of the fact that he also knew my position regarding the shenanigans in Anambra politics at the time, he also welcomed my entry into the political field. Luckily, I won that election after the Tribunal Court of Appeal, even up to the Supreme Court. My victory was reaffirmed, and we found ourselves at a critical junction in the nation's history as part of the 7th Assembly House of Representatives, as led by now Sokoto Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal.
So, because they say politics is for the tough-minded, especially politics in Nigeria, how easy was it for you to adjust to life as a politician?
Well, when you come into a venture with an altruistic mind, it will be easy for you to get along. And so, because prior to that time I had been secretary of the umbrella organization of all of Ogbaru people in Lagos for about 8 years, so I should say I was at home with the people of Ogbaru, both in Lagos and back home in the village. Since I finished secondary school over 40 years ago, I've not done the usual Christmas rush. I count myself as one of those who always go back home. I've always done Christmas in my little village in Ogbaru. And so I'm in touch with the people. So it was an easy transition, moving from journalism to real active politicking.
All right. So you moved into the Labour Party to the surprise of many people. What did you see in the Labour Party?
First, you have to believe in principles, in leaders. Some people call it godfatherism, but I think that it has to do more with a leader that you believe in his or her policies. In this case, like I said, I joined the All Progressives Congress, then led by, at the time, Governor Peter Obi. So when he left the PDP sometime in May 2022, he threw the gates open and asked some of us who were close to him and who believed in his philosophy to come along. Because in a movement, yes, a man can drive it, but it doesn't take a single individual to change the world. So he also needed some of us who bought into his vision earlier enough to come on board and spread the message. That was how I found myself easily getting absorbed into the labor movement.
Yes, your election was not a stroll in the park, but was there a time you felt you may not get a chance to return to the House?
Yes, it had to do with the role of money in Nigerian politics. Having stayed out of the House for about 8 years, having left in 2015, you're right, it could not have been a stroll in the park because of the heavy influence of money. When you call people for a meeting, of course, if people have paid money, 2,000, 3,000 as transport costs to come and attend your meeting, you're also expected to, if nothing, give them back, their transport costs. We've not evolved to the level where supporters actually are expected to make financial contributions. And so a lot of people felt that we couldn't make it. But like I said, once you remain true to the people and they feel that you can represent their interests, you can always run an open door policy. Then in this last election, we also shared in the grace which Mr. Peter Obi carried. So it helped us to spread our message to the grassroots. There was an easy buy-in. But besides all of that, I can tell you that those who feel that they're the real politicians who have taken it as a hobby, I do have a second address. And so for the 8 years, I went into online publishing. But those who feel that they live by politics will throw everything into the ring to stop you in your tracks. And they did try, but at the end of the day, through the grace of God and the goodwill of Mr. Peter Obi, here we are today, surmounting all the odds.
So talking about Peter Obi, I know you said it's not godfatherism, but leadership. So was his influence a major factor in your victory?
Yes, I told you first, the all glory goes to God. And then the second major factor is the Peter Obi factor. Because his message resonated amongst the youths. I'm from Anambra State like him. So it was also easy for the people of Anambra State, Ogbagaru particularly, to key into the message. We are not selling anything new. They also knew when Peter Obi was on the saddle for 8 years, and he really turned around the state in terms of infrastructure, in terms of bringing civility to the political space and charting the way forward for the state. So it was quite easy for the people to key into our message.
So, as a returnee to the House, what should your Ogbaru constituents expect this time?
First, they know that my presence in the House of Representatives will give them a voice, which is one of the things I'm doing here with you. I've heard you mention Ogbaru at least 10 times since your introduction and the program began. So they have a voice. And that voice would only be positive when there are issues that affect Ogbaru and is taken to the floor. It won't be a new name. I am not one to sit on my palms. I will always talk about our problems, our aspirations, and our desires. Ogbaru lies on the coast of the Great River Niger, and the seasonal flooding that takes place in Nigeria impacts heavily and negatively on the people of Ogbaru. So these are areas that we also look out for. Ogbaru, too, being a semi-urban local government or federal constituency, will do with a lot of skills acquisition for the teeming youths that live therein and are from Ogbaru. So these are things that they know that in the short span of 4 years that I was there before, we did some of that, even though the political climate didn't allow us to return. So it's like getting back, getting wiser, getting bolder, and more experience to represent them this time around.
All right, Honorable Victor, now let's move to the tussle for the principal positions in the 10th National Assembly. With all of this unfolding intrigues, how will you describe it?
Well, if I even have to speak like an outsider, I'm sure that the average Nigerian will be worried about what is going on in the governing All Progressives Congress. Ordinarily, I'm not a member of that party, and it shouldn't bother me. But as a Nigerian, I'm bothered that the incoming administration is almost taking off on a wrong footing. When you give a sense of control over an important institution like the House of Representatives or the National Assembly as a whole, it sends dangerous signals of what is to come. People are already beginning to say, wait a minute, is this how the running of the National Assembly will be interfered with? If in the simple matter of choosing its own leaders, even guaranteed by the grant on the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, Section 60 thereof states that the House shall have powers to regulate its own conduct. But even before regulating its own conduct, in Section 51B, it says that the members, talking of the House of Representatives, are expected to choose its own leaders, a speaker and deputy speaker, from among themselves. It does not even talk about the APC as a political party or the Labour Party. So when we have a party like the APC, now microzoning positions to individuals is something to be worried about. You are trying to take away that right of the members to choose their own leaders. And if I may go further, yes, people may say it's an internal party arrangement. It might be an internal party arrangement, but it's also infringing on the rights of the entire membership if you seek to impose a speaker and deputy speaker. Because for one, if I participate freely in the election of these presiding officers, I should own them. I should choose somebody who is relatable, who can treat us as first among equals, who can treat us as colleagues. But if you derive your power from outside the chambers, then the members may not be in for a good time. And this is probably why you see all the rumpus going on, all the back and forth, even within the All Progressives Congress.
So I'm sure a lot of Nigerians are also wondering, why is the race generating so much heat when it's not even a general election?
Well, you should go to the managers of the APC, because it's been repeated often that if you do the same thing the same way over and over, you are bound to get same results. Contemporary Nigerian history, especially as it has to do with the legislature, proves that whenever the executive tries to influence the choice of principal officers, then the members will revolt and seek to put their own leaders. At least our recent history, dating back to, in fact, even from 1999, each time the government stood for a particular candidate, even if they find their way through, as in the case in 1999 with Salisu Buhari, you saw that a few months later, he was gone. And then, when Masari came, because they willingly gave their votes to Masari, he led them and there was no problem. Same thing, Gali Naaba. But when he got to like 2011, and the party, out of some pettiness, decided to zone, because in zoning, there is nothing wrong in zoning, but it must be done on the basis of equity, fairness, and justice. Once you go outside these prisms, the members will revolt. That was what happened in 2011. It was repeated in 2015. Now, 2019, there was a difference, but people should also study the undercurrents. In 2019, the APC had the numbers to play the kind of game it played. But In 2023, for goodness sake, they do not have that numbers. In 2019, I think they had about 242 members. So they could go for an election and, if they have their acts together, produce a speaker. But this time around, where we even have what we will now is now termed as the greater majority of 7 opposition political parties, they should be worried that we can get together and even produce our own speaker and deputy speaker. So I don't know who is advising them, but it's to our benefit. Our only worry is that we are talking about a national project. Because, of course, when you get to the floor of the National Assembly, the House of Representatives, we should be talking Nigeria. And that's why we are worried, like the ordinary Nigerian on the street, that the members must get their acts right from day one.
All right, so definitely I'm going to come to how this whole division favors your side of the story now. But before then, the APC nominated candidates for the 10th National Assembly positions, but the decision is generating reactions such that some aspirants said they will not drop their bids. Is it right to go against the wish of one's party? Honorable Victor.
Even the president-elect did go against the wish of his own political party. Only last year, there was a presidential primaries. And at some point, they floated the idea of a consensus candidate in the current Senate president. But he stood against that and said that in a proper democracy, everybody should be allowed to go to the field and slug it out. At the end of the day, that democratic reasoning sailed through, which was why he was able to stand the election and win. So if that happened only barely a year ago, I don't know why the tables will seek to be turned when it comes to the National Assembly. All the people jostling for this office are all members of the All Progressives Congress, at least as at today. So, and if you have 7 children, the best is to give them all fair chances to stand election. And if you are even going to do zoning, you can say it's going to the North Central, Northeast, Northwest. But when you now zero down on individuals, then there is a hidden agenda behind that kind of recommendation.
All right, Honorable Victor, let me come from this angle. If the APC NWC says this decision is to reduce the scope of contention, shouldn't this be substantive enough for any loyal party member, or does party supremacy only exist when it favors a politician?
No, I told you earlier that any decision, nobody is allowed to obey an unlawful order. Nobody. I think Section 15 of even the Nigerian Constitution precludes anybody from suffering injury on the basis of where you come from, tribe, race, religion, sex. So ordinarily, the Constitution takes precedent. You are supposed to allow everybody, even if you want to talk about pruning the number, then that is where consensus comes into the picture. And consensus entails discussing with everybody who has thrown his or her hat in the ring. In this instance, at least as we know, even from the visit to the APC national headquarters today, they were not carried along. Nobody spoke to them. And when you do that, the fear of everybody is the coming tyranny. It is time-honored saying that power corrupts, and it corrupts absolutely. If they do this and get away with it, who knows what is coming next? So it's better to look for the black goat while it's still there. I think that is what has given room to these kind of agitations. And don't forget, if they sit together in a room and prune their number, it's even manageable. But I'm not even, like I said earlier, it favors us in the minority group, the greater majority. They're only giving us a leeway to reenact what happened in 2015 that saw a PDP member emerge as Deputy Senate President. We are all here to serve our country, Nigeria. And if in the service of Nigeria, I hurt one man, I think I'll be happier than for it.
All right, tonight on the program, we're discussing the race to the 10th National Assembly as the battle for the principal position heats up with the member-elect of the House of Representatives representing the Ogene Federal Constituency of Anambra State, Victor Afam Ogene. This discussion continues after this break.